Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. I'm Mercy. Our speaker today will be Grace Njogu. Grace is a licensed food service diet therapist with the Kenyan Nutritionist and Dietitian Institute, with a broad set of skills applicable across different sectors and roles. She's currently working Winnie is a nutritionist, and she's going to talk today to us on nutrition for children. We can have introduce herself more. Yeah, thank you. And kindly we'll be muting everyone. And then after she's finished presenting, we'll you raise your hand up, and then we'll unmute you so that we don't have any interruption in the session. So yeah, thank you so much. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you so much, Mercy, for that. I am Grace Njogu, a food service dietherapist. I am currently working at the hospital setting, and I am glad to be here today. And I will be the facilitator for today. I'll be the trainer for today. Can everyone see my slides?
Okay, you can zoom. Yeah, it's fine now. It's clear.
Okay. You can still see it from here.
Okay, you can just put it on the whole screen.
So is it okay now?
Zoom in. You zoom out a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I zoom out. Okay, is it here now? Here now.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Grace Njogu. I will be your trainer for today. And today we are going to learn about child nutrition. So, yes?
You're breaking.
Am I end right now? Clear.
You're still breaking. We can't get you clearly.
We can't hear you, Grace.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. Hello.
Hello, you're getting you.
Now you're getting me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Myself,
We're
I can hear
getting you.
Pardon?
we can hear you.
Okay. So now the
Hello, you're breaking.
okay. Well, can I request that everyone who can actually hear me without me breaking to at least give me a thumbs up on the chat box or something of that sort so that I can know. Thank you. So the rest can't hear me. Can the rest hear me?
We can hear you, but you're breaking.
Okay, kama session ya kesho ni the first 100 days of a child. Jana ingine ya immunization. Oh, that's good.
Okay. I am checking my internet and it's okay. So can you guys okay, I think it's my internet connection, but I have rectified it. I don't know whether on the other end it's okay.
You can go on.
Okay. So So today we are going to talk about child nutrition. And the reason why we are going to talk about child nutrition there are so many people who have spoken about it, but then one of the things that I want you to note is these two quotes. One says that investing in early childhood nutrition is a surefire strategy. The returns are incredibly high. And the other is that parents need to make nutrition education a priority in their home environment, as it's crucial for good health, longevity, and instilling sound eating habits from an early age. You can hear me?
Yes, you're getting used to.
Okay. So the objective of this training session is just to enable us to understand the guiding principles and of childhood nutrition, of child nutrition, and how to apply them in infant and young child feeding. So that is the only objective of this training session. So there are several guiding principles for infant and young child feeding. So the first guiding principle is that there's the exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life, and then introduction of complementary feeds at 6 months. And then we have the maintenance of breastfeeding up to 2 years and beyond. We have what we call responsive feeding. We have safe preparation and storage of complementary foods. We have giving children adequate amounts of complementary foods. Then we have appropriate food consistency, that is in the complementary feeding. We have adequate meal frequency and energy density of the meal, adequate nutrient content, appropriate use of vitamin and mineral supplements for infants and mothers. And then we have increased feeding during and after illness. So these are the things that we are going to talk about in today's session. So these are my key talking points for today's session. So we start with the first guiding principle, which is exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months and introduction of complementary foods from 6 months. So there is a very strong link between breastfeeding, malnutrition, and child survival. And because the main aim of feeding this child is to ensure that it survives and it lives its whole lifetime. That is the main goal of child nutrition. So what is optimal breastfeeding? So optimal breastfeeding actually just encompasses 3 very simple things. So it is early initiation of breastfeeding, that is within 1 hour. So when a child is born, they are supposed to be put on the breast within 1 hour of birth. And then this child is supposed to breastfeed exclusively for the first 6 months. So exclusive breastfeeding means they do not take anything else except breast milk. So no water, nothing, except probably medicine if they fall sick, nothing else. So it's just breast milk and breast milk alone. And breast milk is able to supply everything that they need for those 6 months. And then the third thing is that we need to continue breastfeeding these children for 2 years and beyond. So if I am going too fast, you can slow me down. Then now we go to complementary feeding, because the first point says exclusive breastfeed for 6 months and then introduce complementary feeding at 6 months, right? So complementary feeding is the period during which other foods or liquids are provided along with breast milk or formula. So if you look at the graph that is on the screen, you can see that between 0 and 6 months, if you look at the graph really well, the place where it's light blue, that is where we have breast milk. So breast milk provides all the energy that this child needs to survive. So for the past 6 months, breast milk is providing everything. But then as the child continues to grow, we can see that the amount of energy being provided by breast milk is reducing. So that is where now we introduce solid, semi-solid, or soft foods to now complement whatever is being given by breast milk so that we can get to 100% of the energy. And the main goal of also complementary feeding is to enable this child to be able to transition into family foods by the time they are at 24 months. Family foods are supposed to provide 100% of the energy requirements of this child. So that is complementary feeding. It just means that that this food that they're being given is complementing breast milk in the amount of energy that is being given to, that is needed by the child. And complementary feeding is not, because weaning means that the child is off breast milk completely. But then with complementary feeding, it is complementing, whether it is breast milk or formula, but then it is complementing that. So exclusive breastfeeding before 6 months, the children who have been exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months most of them show no deficit in weight or length gain. They have significant reduction in the risk of gastrointestinal infections. Then also iron deficiency, there's very decreased iron deficiency. So for children who are not exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months, actually it is known that there is a possible increase in iron deficiency. But then the data is limited for this particular point. Then also for the mother, one of the greatest things is that your menstrual cycle is also delayed, and then weight loss, postpartum weight loss is also accelerated. And then there's also reduced risk of mother to child transmission of HIV and AIDS. So that is, so we have said that you have to maintain breastfeeding, because if you look at this graph, the complementary feeding graph, you can see breastfeeding is maintained up to 24 months. That is where energy decreases to 0. So we have to maintain breastfeeding up to 24 months, and it is actually 24 months and beyond. So you can actually choose to continue breastfeeding this child even after 24 months. So the third point that I want to talk about is responsive feeding. And one thing that we can all agree with is that children actually require help to eat. There is no 6-month-old who can feed themselves. So children actually require help to eat. And so responsive feeding is just the manner in which you feed this child. So responsive feeding is actually something that is very necessary for us to be able to achieve adequate food intake, which is our main objective. And you can have a positive responsive feeding style and a negative responsive feeding style. So a positive feeding style is one that is responsive. So you respond to the infant's hunger and satiety cues. This means when the infant or when the baby is hungry, you feed them. And when they are full, you stop feeding them. So I will just want to ask a question. And I think you can actually answer probably in the chat box. What are the things that, how do we know that a child is hungry? What are some of the things that can tell us a child is hungry? Aha. Aha. Okay, so there's crying, there's sucking the fingers. Yeah, those are actually very good points. And so what will tell us a child, after you have now given them the food, what will tell us the child is actually full? Yeah, refusing to eat more. Yes, so one of them is actually refusing to eat more. The next one is some children will actually just push the plate away. And you know, the best thing about children is that they actually, they are children are the best human beings, are best at obeying their body cues. That is, from before now life takes over, children actually really obey their body cues. So when they are hungry, they will show you that they are hungry until they get satisfied. When they are satisfied, they also show you that they are satisfied. But then remember, we have to respond with love and also be patient with this, because okay, for us, most of the time what we do is when a child is when you actually want to feed a child according to your timeline. That is one. And then the next thing is, if I have a bowl, let's say full of uji, if you have a bowl full of uji, you want the child to finish that uji just because you put a bowl full of uji. But then it doesn't mean, if the child wasn't hungry as much, you will want to beat them, you will want to punish them. And this is not right, because one of the things that responsive feeding actually advocates for is love and patience. And the other thing about positive feeding styles is that it is also active. So you can't just give food once and that's it. So you have to be actively offering food. You have to encourage intake at regular intervals. So that is why children also need schedules. And remember, the one thing that is key and paramount in all this is that there is supposed to be love and patience with this feeding style. So now, what is the opposite of this? The opposite of this is force feeding and disruption of self-regulation. So self-regulation is the fact that, you know, the baby knows it's hungry, it feeds. The baby knows it's full, it stops feeding. That is their self-regulation mechanism, and that is something we are actually born with. But then what force feeding will do is that the baby will know, I have to sit down and finish this plate before I feel full. So whether I feel full in the process of eating this meal, I have to complete this meal. So you see, you have already destroyed or disrupted their self-regulation mechanism. So whether they have 5 serving spoons of rice on their plate, they know, I won't stop when I'm satisfied. I will stop when this food is off my plate. And also, the other thing is that it's not active. So we've said that positive responsive feeding is active. So the negative feeding, a negative feeding style is not active. So it's laissez-faire. That is, the child is allowed to do anything. And once you allow a child to eat, they actually will just be eating. Probably, if right now you ask a child what is the most important food to eat in this world, they will tell you, most of them will probably come with ice cream, cake, biscuits. So if you do that, it will mean that either the child will have a reduced appetite because they won't be feeding as they are supposed to, or they will be ill, or they will have nutrient deficiencies, because that will just mean that they are probably eating the same nutrients every time. If you ask a child to choose whatever they want to eat, most children will will remove vegetables from their plates, of which we know some of these nutrients are also found in vegetables. So that is why we have to encourage positive feeding styles as opposed to a negative feeding style. So we have safe preparation and storage of these complementary foods. So for the second half of infancy, we can see there's usually a peak of diarrhea. And that is because if complementary food, like during this stage of feeding, if you do not prepare the foods safely, and it is not also stored safely, diarrheal disease is actually, it is so easy for these children to keep getting diarrhea. And the main cause of actually this childhood diarrhea is microbial contamination. And the microbial contamination comes from unsafe preparation and unsafe storage of complementary foods. So we are supposed to practice good hygiene. We are supposed to handle food properly so that we can be able to prevent microbial contamination. So what are these things that we can do so that we can prevent microbial contamination? One, the simplest, you're supposed to wash the caregiver, so the person who's handling the food is supposed to actually wash their hands before each feeding episode. And you're also supposed to remember to wash the child's hands before each feeding episode, because children are actually really quick to put their hands inside food. So you're supposed to ensure that even their hands are safe. So foods are supposed to be cooked thoroughly and served immediately after preparation. Foods are also supposed to be stored safely, and then utensils are supposed to be very clean, and they are also supposed to be germ-free. Therefore, you're supposed to actually be very careful when washing the baby's utensils. If possible, have a separate place where you put the baby's utensils, so that you can actually you can have extra steps in ensuring that this baby's items are actually always sanitary. Then we are supposed to avoid using baby bottles, teats, or sippy cups, and that is because the teat or the sippy cup at the teat where they suck or where they suckle, you can have a lot of microbial contamination because it's one of the hard to reach areas. Therefore, germs can really multiply, and therefore you can just be having constant diarrhea, and the child can start having constant diarrhea and you do not know the cause. So avoid using baby bottles or teats or sippy cups, and try and use this cups and spoon method, because it's so easy to wash a spoon, it's so easy to wash a cup. So I want us to look at this. Yeah, this one you'll also tell me in the what concern do you have about these children feeding? And if it is okay, you can also say it's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you'll answer in the chat box anything that you can notice, you're noticing about this feeding, how the children are feeding. From whatever we have learned up to now, what do you see, or are there any concerns that you can see with whatever is happening in this picture? The little one can't feed herself like her siblings are doing, yes. Any other person? The area is not hygienic for the children. There should be a caregiver to monitor, yes. Yes. So yeah, actually that child can touch the ground and still go and touch one child's food and take it in, and so on and so forth. Yes. So we go to adequacy. So as we are actually, baby is actually getting adequate or enough amounts of food in a day and in a sitting. And remember, because this is a child who is growing, we have to gradually continue increasing the serving sizes of the food. So this is what should happen. So between 6 and 8 months, we are supposed to start with 30 to 45 milliliters of food, and then we are gradually increasing to a half of a 250 ml cup. So that is halving. And from 12 to 24 months, they're supposed to be actually eating 3/4 of a cup fully. But then remember also between 12 and 24 months, Did you? I think I just lost connectivity. Can everyone hear me right now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So the other thing is appropriate food consistency. So we know that the child is developing, and by certain ages, there's some certain reflexes that the child has developed. So we are supposed to give this child food according to the reflexes or the skill level. Yani huwezi, kuna pahali hauwezi pea mtoto, let's say a 6-month-old child, you can't give them githeri because they do not have the correct reflexes for that food. So between 0 and 6, the reflex that a child knows is suckling and swallowing. So the consistency of the food that they can eat is just liquid. Then between 6 and 7, they get an early up and down munching, so they can move their mouth up and down. Here now, that is where you give them pureed foods. And then between 7 months and 12 months, at least they are learning to bite, whether they have teeth, whether they have started getting teeth or not. At least they know how to bite. They can actually chew, and they can actually get the movement of food to teeth. So this is where you give mashed or soft foods, and also you can give finger foods because they can actually grab the food and take it to their mouth. Then between 12 and 24 months, here now they have actually gotten the gist of chewing, and their jaws are actually stable such that they can actually, like, they are able to really chew. Their tongue is able to also move food around in the mouth, so they are able to start consuming soft family foods. So there are certain points to note on the appropriate food consistency. One is that infants have a maturing neuromuscular systems and teeth, which affect their ability to chew and swallow different food consistencies, just as I have said. And a child can actually eat any food except honey due to risk of botulism in cow's milk. And this can be fed to a child after 6 months, as long as it is in the correct consistency, as we have seen earlier. So if the child is between 6 and 7, the food should be pureed. If the child is between 7 and 12 months, the food is mashed. So long as this food is in the correct consistency, this child can actually eat. So honey and milk can be fed to a child actually after 6 months. And children actually do not need teeth to consume food, such as eggs, meats, and green leafy vegetables. So they are supposed to be fed on these things because these things don't actually need teeth. The only thing they need is to be in the right or in the appropriate consistency. So what are the energy requirements for a child? So there are certain reference values, or the values that we refer to for the amounts of nutrients that a child requires. And these are what we call reference values. These are actually just the requirements for each child, or in a certain age group, or in a certain stage of development. And it is given just in terms of the total amount required. So the total amount of breast milk or the total amount of complementary foods required. How much energy does this food give? So how much is needed from complementary foods? So from the graph, we can see the graph is divided into 3 places. So between 6 and 8 months, between 9 and 11 months, and between 12 and 23 months. And we can see between 6 and 8 months, we need 615 kilocalories. And 413 of these come from breast milk. Then 202 is what comes from complementary food. So that's why even the amount of food that is given to this child is also little. But then we can see as we continue what happens between 9 and 11 months, we need 686 kilocalories, or the child needs 686 kilocalories per day. 379 comes from breast milk, and 307 comes from the complementary foods. So what happens is here it's almost a 50-50 balance. It's almost like breast milk is providing almost half, and then complementary foods are providing almost half. But by the time the child gets between 1 year and between 1 and 2 years, what happens? We can see the energy requirements also increase because the child is growing. But what we see is the breast milk, the amount of energy from breast milk decreases as the amount of energy from complementary foods is increasing. So children also, the other thing about why children need to consume meals frequently is because they have a small stomach size. So they have their stomach capacity, their carrying capacity of the stomach is around 200 milliliters, which is actually less than 1 cup. So if this child is supposed to consume, let's say 1000 ml of food in total. So for an adult, it's about 330 to 350 ml. But then for this child is 200 ml. So for a child, for us to get to a total of 1000 ml in a day, this child will have to eat how many chat box, how much. If a child is supposed to take, we've said a child, the quantity or the volume, the stomach volume for a child is 200 ml. So if a child is supposed to take 1000 ml in a day, how many feeds is this child supposed to get in that one day?
5.
Yes, 5 feeds. And so we've now said for an adult, it's around 330 to 350 ml. So how many feeds will an adult have to get?
3.
Yes. So now that is why the meal frequency and energy density of this child's meals should be adequate. So anafaa kupewa chakula at appropriate frequencies. The stomach size is already small. So you have to give, for you to be able to get to the requirements of this child every single day, you have to increase the number of times this child feeds. And also the other thing that you can also do is increase the density of whatever is getting into this child's stomach increases. So that is what we call energy density. So energy density is just how much energy does this child get from consuming this food. So because we've already said the stomach is small. Since the stomach is small, you need to fill it with things that are energy, like to ensure that we get to the target of whatever we want to get to. So here we have an example of 2 plates of uji. So you can see from whatever we can observe, one of the things that you can observe is one is lighter, one is more of runny. We can call it a runny kind of consistency. And the other, or one has more water compared to the other. The other is more of a dropping consistency. And if you look at it, ukiona hapo chini, at the bottom, we can see that the amount, we've said the energy is measured in kilocalories. So you can see the one that has a runny consistency, or the thin porridge, only has 40 kilocalories per 100 grams. And that is because it has more water than the food that is supposed to be providing energy. But then on this other side, for our thick porridge, we have 80 kilocalories in 100 grams. And that is why we have to, and okay, we have said, let's say if our target is 1,000 kilocalories, 1,000 mLs, which means, let's say 1,000, yeah, which is 1,000, if our target is 1,000 mLs, and let's say for every 100 ml, the child A, okay, let's say, see, we have said that, I'm trying to formulate my question. So I want to pose a question. We have these 2 ujis. So child A is consuming the uji on our left. Then child B is consuming the uji on our right. So child A is consuming thin porridge, child B is consuming thick porridge. And we are giving them 200 ml of this porridge 5 times a day. Which child will have consumed more than the other? They are consuming the same amount. So if child A is getting 200 ml per feed, child B is also getting 200 ml per feed. So who, at the end of the day, who is getting more energy than the other? Thank you, Terry. Yes, child B is, child B is actually getting more energy than child A. So as I was explaining, energy density, that is from what we have seen, affects feeding frequency. So the more the food, the more dense, the more energy dense a food is, the less number of times you will have to feed that infant. So if a child is consuming the thin porridge, this child will have to feed more times to get the same amount of energy compared to the child consuming the thick porridge. And some ways that we increase energy density is you can add fat, or you can add fat sources into the child's food, or you can actually just, as simple as whatever we have done on this, we have done here. You reduce the amount of water, or the amount of liquid that you use preparing. You reduce the amount of water that is used in preparing the food.
Bonne night, PUBG, PUBG.
Or increase you increase fat. So you add oil or you add fat. If a child is consuming foods with the correct
Cook among us.
one of the ways that we have said we can increase energy density is by adding oil or adding fat in the child's food. So why are we adding fat? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear you, but there are bits we have missed.
Where?
I think you should go maybe. Okay. Where were we? Because the last bit I remember,
here.
I think, okay, yeah, I think you should start from there.
But from here we got.
Yeah, we hapa tulipata ni child B, so moving on, so moving forward.
Okay. So one of the ways we increase energy density is by adding on the food. So kama ni kumash food, you reduce the amount of liquid that you use to mash food with. If it is making porridge, you ensure that the porridge is thick. It's not. Bread. Sai. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can go on.
Breaking.
No.
Okay. And now?
Okay, now we can hear you.
Breaking, even now. checking my internet connection. Can everyone hear me now? Am I still breaking?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry about that. My internet is a bit shaky. So we had just spoken about energy density and the different and why it is important. And one of the reasons why energy density is very important, number of feed. This if the child, if you will have to feed this child frequently. Now is it okay? Now, can you now hear me? Without breaking? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but you are breaking.
I'm still breaking, even now.
No, we can get you now.
Okay. So as I was saying, that the reason why energy density is so important is because it reduces actually the meal frequency, the feeding frequency that you're supposed to feed the child. Because sometimes you might actually be feeding the child. We can be having snacks, but then the child is not getting enough energy from their food, and that is because their food is not energy dense. So a 6 to 8 month old child is supposed to have at least 2 to 3 meals a day with 1 to 2 snacks, and snacks is as needed. And a child 9 to 24 months supposed to have 3 to 4 meals in a day with 1 to 2 snacks as needed. So one of the ways that we said that we can increase our fat intake, our energy density, one of the ways that we can increase our energy density is by increasing or adding in our foods. And that is because, and the reason why fat intake is also so, it is a major source of energy. So it helps in adding or increasing the energy density of the food that you are given or you're giving the child. The other reason is because what is also needed, because this child's brain is growing. Their nervous system is also growing. So fat is also needed for these specific functions. So now, a question for the chat box. How do we add fat to a child's food? What are some of the ways that you can actually add fat, except pouring oil into the food? So what are some of the creative ways that you can actually increase the fat content of this children's food? Anyone? Add foods like avocado, yes. Nah. Peanut butter in soups. Kuna yenye natafuta yenye ni the most common and it is the easiest. Fish. Kuna the most common. It is very easy. It is the easiest thing. And I think that's why we are not thinking about it. Blue band. But I will discourage blue band. Yenye ninatafuta ni we fry instead of giving, okay, we are used to giving children boiled, you boil everything, alafu una mash, unapea mtoto. So now instead of boiling, you actually should fry, because we've said from the in the beginning, we said the goal of this child, yes, frying is actually good. It's just that we are not frying, you're not using, because we are not supposed to fry with a lot of oil, but frying is actually really good. Because, okay, thing is, this child is supposed to, by the time they're getting to 24 months, they're supposed to have transitioned from their foods zile chakula zao za utoto, now they go to family foods. And remember, your family foods, it is how your family, the family foods is actually how you healthy. So what happens is, we are supposed to make this person, this child is supposed to transition from their foods, that is the puree, the mash, now to family foods. And I know for most of us, we actually fry our foods, right? So if you fry your food, what is supposed to prepare this child to transition from their boiled foods to your fried foods? You are supposed to, like, it's almost like you are just introducing them to your way of eating. So the difference is now the consistency of whatever they are eating. Has that answered your question, Joanne?
Okay, you're speaking, but we can't hear you.
We have lost her again.
Hello. I think you can just share the slides since one losing. Okay, Grace is being. I can just send the slides and we'll do a recap for the session that we have missed. And I think there's someone who shared the link also on the WhatsApp or on their social media accounts, since we saw there was some tampers on the screen and also there was so much noise, but I just dealt with it. The person who was doing that, I removed him. So I think we just end the session. What do you think? Okay, we have just an interactive thing. We decide if we are going to leave it, and then
The speaker is back.
see Grace is back. Grace, you can just don't share the screen. Maybe by sharing maybe sharing the screen has caused the connection problem. You can just give us the give us the view, and then you send the slide, share with everyone. And yeah, that. And then if there will still be some problem, we might leave the session at that.
Pardon?
Okay. Katile, you can ask Grace to mute since I can't see her mic. Her mic. I can just see the video, so I don't know why I can't see her mic. Or alternatively, Grace, you can leave and then try joining back. We see if your mic will be back. Oh, thank you. And now you can just proceed on. You can talk. Okay, you can explain, and then you share the notes. Don't share the slides. I think by sharing the slides, it will cause more connection problems.
Okay. How do I stop sharing my
Okay, Grace, you can unmute, and then we hear you are audible.
Hello, Mercy.
Yes, Katila.
I think we can have the feedback form, and those who have questions, they can fill the form, and then we share to Grace, and then we'll give them feedback maybe tomorrow, because I think she has left again. That's my opinion, though I don't know about the participants.
I hope now you can hear me.
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so now I won't share my screen, but now, so we are just from saying why fat intake is important for young children. It's because it's a major source of energy, and also it's needed for the brain and the nervous system. That is for brain growth, for brain development. So then we go to protein. So for infants, 6 to 8 months, they need 9.1 grams of protein in a day. those of 9 to 11 months need only 9.6 grams of protein kg in a day. And then for 12 to 23 months, they need 10.1 grams proteins a day. Then the thing about proteins is that so long as we have met the calorie needs, the protein requirement most of the time is usually met. But then when it now comes to protein, we have some foods that have higher protein quality than others. So breast milk, animal source foods, that is meats, eggs, are actually good, or diets that actually have, they combine grains and beans, rice and dengu. So if you do that, your diet or your child's diet, the child's diet is high in protein, will be high in protein, or will have sufficient protein, enough protein for the child. But if you give like just pure starches, so like something like ugali or potatoes only, you will not be providing the adequate amount of protein that this child needs in a day, especially if you just give the starchy roots. So that is something like if you only give Irish potatoes peke yake, or you give cassava peke yake, you won't meet the child's nutritional needs za protein. So then we go to micronutrients. Micronutrients, so given that most children, actually for most children, they consume predominantly a plant-based diet. So most of the things zenye watoto hukula zinakuanga plant-based. So things like rice, things like ugali, things like lentils, ndengu, nutrients that are usually of most concern. Nutrients that are usually of most concern are iron, zinc, vitamin A, and iodine. So nimesema iron, zinc, vitamin A, na iodine. But then there's a reason. So for this question that I am about to ask, the person who actually answers it the first gets something small. So why is iodine not such a great concern at the moment? So we say that these are the nutrients that we are most concerned about because the child's diet is mainly plant-based. So ina consist mainly of plants. Lakini, I am not worried about iodine so much. Why am I not worried about iodine? The first person to get it, get something small. It is something that we use daily. It's something if ikikosa chakula haionji vizuri. Okay.
Salt.
Yes, the first person. Yeah, mtu wa kwanza alipata ni Marie Michelle. So yeah, so for Marie Michelle, you will have something small coming up. I think you can share your number. Something small will be coming up. That is correct. The reason why why iodine these days is not, we're not worried about iodine is because the government has already put out a policy on iodization of salts. Therefore, so long as a mother or a caregiver is using salt in the child's food, we are not worried about iodine. For vitamin A, what happens is there is every year from 0 to, okay, from 6 months kuendelea mbele, every year the child is supplemented with vitamin A twice. So how do we increase nutrient quality? The surest way, ile sure bet yenye tunaweza fanya ya increase nutrient quality for the diet is you just feed a variety of foods. So if you once you increase variety, that is sio kila siku waru, terere na ndengu. So today it is waru, terere and dengu. Tomorrow it is spinach, rice and maybe liver. So once you actually diversify, you increase the variety of the foods that this child is taking, you will be able to increase the nutrient quality. So the first one that we talked about was energy density. But then now, after you have increased energy density, like tumeongezea the amount of energy yenye huyu mtoto anapata kwa hii chakula in a day, we are also supposed to ensure that anapata zile nutrients ambazo anahitaji kutoka kwa ile chakula. Kwa hivyo we also increase the nutrient quality. Na tulisema energy density increase tu kwa kuongezea oil na reducing the amount of water. So but nutrient quality tunatumia by feeding a variety of foods. So you cannot get nutrient quality by giving the same foods every single time. You cannot. So you have to provide a variety of foods every single day for you to be able to achieve nutrient quality. So now here we had a slide that you are supposed to so foods, we have foods. Sijui kama I should share this slide and then stop screen sharing. No, we have foods that actually have low nutrient density. Hizi ni vitu kama kina sweets, sodas, they only give energy, but then they don't have any nutrients in them. So something, let's take an example of something like a lollipop. The only thing a lollipop will have is sugar. It doesn't have any vitamins, any minerals, any protein. So that is what we call low nutrient dense foods. So those are the foods that we should be running away from. You feed, although we have said that variety is what gives nutrient quality. There are foods that even if you're giving a variety, so let's say a variety of soda, whether it is Fanta Passion and Fanta Orange, these foods can only be foods that should concern you and giving your children these foods, because the only thing that they provide is sugar. So we go to food feeding during illness, during and after illness. So during illness, one of the things that you should ensure that you are doing constantly is breastfeeding. Continuously breastfeed the child. But then also complementary feeding should also be continuous. So for this, when it comes to the natural fluctuations in appetite for the children, that is, if you have had a sick child, you will know that for children, what happens is at times they seem like they're getting better, and then they go down so easily, and then they look like they're getting better. So what happens is, when now also the appetite is fluctuating, what we do is we do responsive feeding. Responsive feeding was feed when they are hungry, stop when they are full. That was responsive feeding. But then when the child goes for long with poor appetite, that is when they are ill, poor appetite inapotea. So when they go for a long period with poor appetite, you have to do active feeding. Active feeding ilikuwa ile ya try and give as many small meals as possible. So they don't have to eat a complete meal there and then, but then you can give many small meals. So when they are ill, increase their fluid intake, especially for breast milk, but then overall just increase fluid intake, and then offer soft, varied, favorite foods. So hapa ndio ile place yenye kama anataka nyama, you'll try as much as possible, or if they love dengu, or if they love rice, you can offer this meal plenty of time. And then now after illness, so that is during illness, you give favorite foods, and then you offer soft foods, and then you give plenty of fluids. And the one sure way that you can increase fluid intake is increasing breast milk consumption or formula milk consumption. And then after illness, you can now offer more food than usual, and then you look for ways to encourage the child to eat more. So one thing that I will just want us to remember is that babies actually will more often than not breastfeed, even when they refuse other foods, especially when they are sick. Most probably when children are sick, the most they do is breastfeeding. And that is okay, because breast milk will provide all the essential fluids that they need and key nutrients, and also some immune factor for the mother. And most important of all, breastfeeding will also give comfort for this child during their illness. So now we go to the picky eater. What do we do, or how do we overcome the picky eater syndrome? So one of the ways that we can overcome the picky eater syndrome is, one, we involve the child, or we involve children in the process of choosing a meal. So what happens is you can guide them in the way that they are able to, in whatever, let's say, okay, it can be something as simple as, let's say you're making rice and maybe dengu or lentils and cabbage. So you can actually do something as simple as asking whether they would prefer dengu or lentils. So that is one guided way. So you don't give them the leeway, because sometimes unaweza pata the only thing watashinda mkikula maybe ni kitu kama chips or something like, or something they really love. But then you can try and guide the process of them choosing the meal. Also involve them in the process of cooking. These days it is quite easy because there are a lot of toys. You can actually tell them, okay, you can wash this for me as I cut this. So once you involve the child in the process of cooking, they will actually be looking forward to eating the meal, as opposed to a child who hasn't been involved in the whole process. It just looks like you make all the decisions, and then you come here and you want me to just go with the flow. Rebellion will all, as in, it's human nature to rebel. So that is why you have to involve them in the process, so that they don't rebel. And the way they will rebel is by being a picky eater. The other thing is surrounding picky eaters with good role models. So good role models, one is you ensure that whatever is in the house is whatever you want them to eat. That is the first thing. The second thing is you can't be eating pizza and your child is eating rice and or spaghetti and minced meat. They won't like, there will be a clear disconnect and they will try and resist, which will mean they will start becoming a picky eater. But then when they know that everyone actually, let's say, snacks on carrots or fruits are eaten by everyone in this house, it will be a norm. So that is why we have to ensure that you have surrounded the child with good role models, both you as a parent or as a caregiver, and also the things that are available. If the things that are available around the house is mainly junk, they will be a picky eater because junk is actually tastier. It is attractive. So that is why we are supposed to surround our children with good role models. Finally, on how to develop taste and flavor with the food. So the child's food is supposed to be tasty and flavorful. Or yeah, it's supposed to be full of flavor. And if we go back to our class 1 science, our tongue can taste different types of tastes. So we have sweet, bitter, salty, sour, and we have one that is called umami. So umami is the taste of meat. So that is usually the fifth kind of taste that our tongues can taste. So for us to be able to encourage a child to eat or to provide adequate food, or to encourage these children to eat, so that we can be able to provide adequate nutrients for their body, we have to use taste and flavor to our advantage. And the main way that you can use taste and flavor to your advantage is, one, using fresh ingredients. So try as much as possible to ensure that vitu kama kinamboga, carrots, they are fresh, so that they are consumed fresh. So you are able to get the flavor from them. And then you use reasonable amounts of flavor. So if it is kama ni uji, eka sukari inatosha. If it is food, put enough salt. And also try and experiment with things like herbs and spices. So vitu kama kina hoho, dania, try and put these things into the child's food so that it can enhance the taste and flavor of this child's food. So I want to leave you with a quote by Julia Child. And she said that you don't have to cook fancy or complicated masterpieces. You just have to cook good food from fresh ingredients. And that quote still holds. Are there any questions?
I have a question. So, in order to help a picky eater, would creating a scheduled timetable be preferable? Would it be advisable?
Yes, creating a schedule is actually also advisable with picky eaters because they know what to expect. They are able to know, okay, like for children, they survive on routine. Like routines are very important for children. And one of the things that actually creates that routine is knowing when we eat, when I eat and when I don't eat. So even for a picky eater, because for picky eaters, what happens is the problem is whatever is on the plate. It's not the time that they are eating is the problem. For picky eaters, the problem is whatever is on their plate. So timing is just all about like them adhering to a certain schedule. But then for picky eaters, try as much as possible to have them on a routine, but also with the things that I have told you earlier, try and implement them. But then the routine is very necessary for a picky eater.
Okay.
Ni vile sasa the kind of routine that you will have for a picky eater won't be the same as that of a normal eating child. Have I answered your question?
Yes, you have.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I will return the platform back to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Ms. Njogu. Despite some few technical issues, it's been the best one. I think there's no more. There isn't any question even in the chat. Okay, you can leave it at that. In case there will be any question, I'll be sharing a feedback form where they will fill your question, and then I'll share it with Ms. Njogu. Then we'll get the answers back. Thank you so much for the session. You can have a good night. Katila, do you have anything to say?
For me, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we'll be sharing the schedule for graduation. Probably we'll graduate probably next week or after this. After we are done with all the session, we'll have the graduation, and then we'll present. Hope you are still working on your presentations. Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a blessed night. Okay, there's something on the chat. Okay. Have a blessed night all.